Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started. You all can hear me? Yes, good, good. If those folks on this side, I will tell you, we are having trouble with this speaker. So we turned that speaker off. So Deidre, our fabulous tech person, is going to be playing with the sound. But if you're having trouble, my suggestion is move over. There's plenty of seats over here and you'll have no trouble because this speaker is working. So I can give everybody a minute. If you feel like you want to move, please do. Oh, good. Glad. Some people can hear perfectly, but it's okay if you can't. We understand, and you can move to the other side, those of you if you're having trouble on the side. For those just coming in, this speaker is not on today because it sounds like a motor car. We thought that might not be the best thing for our Sunday service. Yes, as Patrick said, unless it's an electric vehicle, and then we would not hear the sound, the benefits of electric. All right, I'm going to start again. Good morning. Today, with the ringing of the Peace Bowl, we affirm our collective hope for peace. We acknowledge that these lands, the lands that we all love, are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people. The Weepacapas, the Tokapayas, the Quevcapayas, and the Yavapai. We're going to start this morning with a video, which is Pass It Down by the band Alabama. Well, good morning and welcome again. For those of you I don't know, I'm Tracy Augustine and I'm your worship associate today. Patty is not here today, but we have a fabulous guest speaker, our very own Patrick Grady. And I'll be telling you a little bit more about him later if you don't know about him. Welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation here in Prescott. A warm welcome to everyone. We're glad you could join us, and welcome everyone to those on Zoom. Hi, Joan. Hi, Karen. I don't have the full gallery, so I can't see everybody. I do see Daryl, James, and it looks like there are about 25 people on Zoom too. So we have quite a few people on Zoom today. Perhaps it was because of Italian night last night. We had a wonderful time hosted by Ria and Nolene from the service auction. We had a journey to Positano right here in Prescott, and it was very, very good with some good food. Some people maybe, I see some thumbs up on Zoom. So I think some people are still sitting on the couch. All right, so if you haven't already, please put your phones on worship mode. I will share the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. As you may recall from the announcements, we'll be having our budget meeting after our service today. So please, if you're here, join us in the sanctuary. There will be time to go get coffee. We're going to have about 15 minutes after the service. So please feel free to have coffee, share some conversation. But if you're staying, and we hope you will, come back in about 15 minutes and we'll have the budget meeting. For those on Zoom, you can stay in the main room, but get a cup of coffee and get settled in while we get settled. And the budget meeting will start about 15 minutes after the service ends. If you're joining us for the first time, please check out our website at prescottuu.org for more information about us. And if you're here in person, you can introduce yourself at the end of our sanctuary time, and then please stay and chat and meet a member or two. We thank again our guest speaker, Patrick Grady, our tech lead in the back, Deirdre Schwartz, and all our Sunday morning volunteers and greeters. In addition to the announcements that you may have seen running on the screen when you first came in, you can read about other things happening at GPUUC in our weekly Peak newsletter, on our website, in Reverend Patty's videos, and we do have some printed copies, I think, on the welcome table. We do. Sandra Palacios, our Faith Development Coordinator, is teaching ages 5 and older across the street at our Faith Development Building. We have a nursery in this building for kids under 5. We do have one message to share from the GPUUC Green Team. On April 23rd, the Reduce, Reuse, and Recycle, RRR, winners from the contest will be announced at the service. After the April 23rd service, Stephen Lovejoy, who I think is on Zoom today, will be conducting a GPUU composting tour. Everyone is welcome. Unfortunately, one thing has changed. Our GPUU Earth Day booth had to be canceled due to some conflicts. And now I'll introduce our guest speaker for today. Although Patrick, as you know, is a member of Granite Peak, I do want to share a few words about him because I think they're quite telling as to why he's here joining us today. Patrick's career was in city, community, and economic development, which eventually, happily, brought him and his wife Leslie to Arizona, actually first to Phoenix, from Florida, Maryland, and Ohio. Upon retirement in 2005, he has been involved in consulting, writing books about history, and many activities in volunteering. His faith journey brought him to be board president of Arizona's Interfaith Power and Light. Patrick and Leslie moved to Prescott in 2017, even more happily for us. Here, he continued his work on the climate crisis. He is the chair, you are still the chair? He is the chair of Yavapai Climate Change Coalition, YCCC, on the board of the Northern Arizona Climate Change Alliance, and he leads the local interfaith climate change action team. GPUU's justice activism is what led Patrick and Leslie to join our congregation in 2020, and where he is now also active on the Green Sanctuary team. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Chris Hawthorne. Today, we light the chalice with these words from the song that you'll be hearing later in the service, Eagle and the Hawk by John Denver. Come dance with the west wind and touch on the mountaintops. Sail o'er the canyons and up to the skies. And reach for the heavens and hope for the future. And all that we can be and not what we are. Now, please feel free to sing along. And I think many of you will know this song. It is a video, but it's a video of Joni Mitchell's Big Yellow Taxi. And so I hope you'll sing along with Joni and with me. That's great. I see a few people who need to join the choir. Somebody, I saw two people who knew, I think, every word to that song. I'm very impressed. All right, so now please join me in saying the words to our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, the quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, thus do we covenant together. Art, I can hear you. Art's like, speed it up, Tracy. Okay. All right. So now we'll switch gears a little bit and take some time to be silent and quiet and meditative. Our beloved community is the heart of Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist congregation. As we experience a time of meditation and music, we will take a few moments to silently acknowledge the joys and concerns of our hearts and our minds. If there is an event which moves you to joy or concern, hope, or gratitude, I invite you to come forward silently and drop a pebble from these two dishes on our sides into our communal water as an affirmation of our connection to one another. You can come up, take a pebble and put it into either bowl. And I'll share the first one in honor and remembrance of Marilyn Coulter, which Patty has just shared the video message yesterday. May our joys and concerns, surrounded by the healing communal water of this beloved community, be acknowledged here today. So may it be. Please sing these words of community and comfort. It's right there. It's going to be there any second. I think unmute it, Dee.
Walking with you is my prayer.
As we prepare to take our offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. April's recipient continues to be Step Up for Kids. You can read about them on the screen and also in the order of service in the announcements. To give online, the link is available in the chat, or you can also go to the website. Please enjoy our offertory music video film, which honors the music of John Denver, as I mentioned before, the Eagle and the Hawk. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through these offerings. What is given in love is received in gratitude. Blessed be.
Fun fact, planet Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Mankind, about 140,000 years old. Let me put that in perspective. If you condense the Earth's lifespan into 24 hours, that's one full day, then we have been here on this planet for, drum roll please, 3 seconds. 3 seconds. And look what we've done. We have modestly named ourselves Homo sapiens, meaning wise man. But is man really so wise? Smart, yes, and it's good to be smart, but not too smart for your own good. Yes, we have split the atom. Yes, we build clever machines that navigate the universe in search of new homes, but at the same time, those atoms we split created nuclear warfare. In our quest to explore the galaxy, rejects and neglects the home that we have here now, so no, that cannot be wisdom. Wisdom is different. While intelligence speaks, wisdom listens, and we willingly covered our ears to Mother Nature's screams and closed our eyes to all of her help-wanted signs. Wisdom knows that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, so if we were wise, we would not be shocked when we see storms that are stronger than ever before, or more drought, hurricanes, and wildfire than ever before, because there's more pollution than ever before, more carbon, more trees cut down than ever before. At a record pace, we have increased the extinction of animals by 1,000 times the normal rate. What a feat. In the next 10 to 100 years, every beloved animal character in every children's book is predicted to go extinct. Lions gone, rhinos gone, tiger, gorilla, elephant, polar bear gone. In 3 seconds. Species that have been here longer than us will be gone because of us. In this 3 seconds. In an existence shorter than a Vine video, we turn the circle of life into our own personal conveyor belt. Somebody, anybody help. We were given so much, the only planet in this solar system with life. I mean, we are 1 in a million. No, actually, scientifically, we are 1 in a billion, trillion. That's a 1 followed by 33 zeros. And I don't want to get too spiritual, but how are we not a miracle? We are perfectly positioned to the sun so we don't burn, but not too distant so we don't turn to ice. Goldilocks said it best. We are just right. This paradise where we are given medicine from trees, not coincidentally, but because like the song says, we are family. Literally, everything, every species is connected genetically, from the sunflower to the sunfish. And this is what we must recognize before it's too late, because the real crisis is not global warming, environmental destruction, or animal agriculture. It is us. These problems are symptoms of us, byproducts of us. Our inner reflection, loss of connection has created this misdirection. We have forgotten that everything contributes to the perfection of Mother Nature. Corporations keep us unaware and disconnected, but they have underestimated our strength. Contrary to popular belief, millions are waking up out of their sleep, seeing our home being taken right up under our feet. We cannot allow our history to be written by the wicked, greedy, and loony. It is our duty to protect Mother Nature from those who refuse to see her beauty. Call me crazy, but I believe we should have the right to eat food that's safe, with ingredients we can pronounce. Drink water that is clean, marvel at trees, breathe air free of toxins. These are natural rights, not things that can be bargained for in Congress. See, they want you to feel powerless, but it has been said that something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a typhoon halfway around the world. Well, when enough people come together, we too will make waves and watch the world into a new era filled with love and connection, freedom for all without oppression. But it is up to you, yes, you watching this behind this screen, to make the effort, because time is of the essence, and only together can we make it to the fourth second.
Powerful. Thank you for having me this morning. We're going to take a journey together. This is the start of the journey with Prince Ea as a prophet. We're going to look at other contemporary prophets this morning concerned about the care and protection of the earth, our common home, Mother Earth. Father Richard Rohr, some of you may know, a Franciscan priest with the Center for Contemplation and Action in New Mexico, has declared the theme of his daily meditations for 2023 to be the prophetic path. Here are some snippets of his description of prophets. The prophet's path is about letting go of illusion and toppling false gods. Prophets are disruptors of social consensus. Prophets do not have to be highly educated, powerful, or well-known. They're everyday people perched at the edge of the inside of our institutions, distant enough to critique injustice, but close enough to be heard. Rabbi Jill Hamer writes that the Hebrew word for prophet comes from the root which means to announce or to proclaim, hence amplifying the voice of the sacred. She goes on, in the Hebrew Bible, prophets have two functions. One function is to see future or hidden truths, but the most primary function of a prophet or prophetess is to correct the moral failings of the people and particularly of the powerful. Think of those words, speaking truth to power. With that context in mind, after we've settled down from Prince Ea, let us begin the journey with our youngest prophetess, Greta Thunberg. Greta burst onto the world stage in Sweden in August of 2018 at the young age of 15. Prompted by recent deadly heat waves and wildfires in Sweden, Greta began her Friday protest outside the Swedish parliament, holding her sign, "School Strike for Climate." The youth movement to combat climate change had begun. In January of 2019, she was invited to speak in Davos, Switzerland, to a gathering of prestigious global leaders. This young girl bluntly told the audience that our house is on fire. I'm here to say our house is on fire. She goes on, we are facing a disaster of unspoken sufferings for enormous amounts of people. And now is not the time for speaking politely or focusing on what we can or cannot say. Now is the time to speak clearly. You say nothing is black or white, but that's a lie. A very dangerous lie. Either we prevent 1.5 degrees centigrade, or for us Americans, 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, of warming, or we don't. Either we avoid setting off that irreversible chain reaction beyond human control, or we don't. Either we choose to go on as a civilization, or we don't. That is as black and white as it gets. There are no gray areas when it comes to survival. That's up to you and me. We must change almost everything in our current societies, Greta says. The bigger your carbon footprint, the bigger your moral duty. The bigger your platform, the bigger your responsibility. Adults keep saying, we owe it to young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear that I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if your house is on fire, because it is. Just take a moment. I'll take a moment. What were you doing at age 16? In the following 16 months, Greta addressed the heads of the UN, met with the Pope, sparred with the ex-president of the United States, and inspired 4 million people to join the largest global climate strike in history in September of 2019. In December, she was actually honored to become the Time magazine Person of the Year. And all of this by a young girl in a solitary stand protecting our planet. In her most recent book, written in 2022, The Climate Book, different title, an outstanding collection of climate wisdom from over 100 experts and writers. She continues to sound the alarm and admonishes us all to listen to the science before it's too late. I particularly value the pages devoted to the global impacts on Indigenous peoples and the most vulnerable. As one subtitle posits, we are not all in the same boat. The climate crisis was created by us, the global north. It's a crisis of inequality that dates back to colonialism and beyond. Those who have done the least to cause it are the ones who will suffer the most. In the last paragraph, don't let this deter you, of her 400-page book, Greta writes, you can pick and choose from different authors, the climate crisis is the greatest challenge humanity has ever faced, a la Prince Ia. We cannot solve this crisis with the same methods and same mindset that got us into it. Truth is on the side of those of you who are most affected by the crisis. Morality is on your side, justice is on your side. I urge you to raise your voice and demand what you are owed. Greta Thunberg is still on the front lines of our contemporary prophets, calling for real transformative action. Well, this morning I actually promised I was going to talk about Kathryn Hayhoe. I'll let you check out her global weirdings at some time on the internet. But I have to spend some time this morning talking about Naomi Klein, a Canadian journalist. Her book and film by the same title, This Changes Everything, came out in 2014. Personal note and a much longer story. Her book and that film, combined with my own faith journey, candidly changed the course of my life. In 2014, believe it or not, I was researching a history of the early settlement of Prescott. By mid-year, I had joined Arizona Interfaith Power and Light, a nonprofit devoted to galvanizing a spiritual response to the climate crisis. And later in 2017, shortly after Leslie and I moved here to Prescott, I joined the Avapai Climate Change Coalition. Prophets do have power to speak to us. At its heart, Naomi's book and film are about capitalism and climate. It's about the illusions of the free marketplace, as well as the oversized role and power that extraction industries and climate deniers have played since the early warnings several decades ago. As Naomi writes, trade and fossil fuels trump climate. Even environmental groups receive her ire for being too close to the business and philanthropic elite. She lauds the work of new climate warriors who engage in what she calls blockadia. It's not top-down environmental groups, it's grassroots resistance. Naomi observes it is the resistance to extraction projects that threaten our waters with contamination as well as impacting supply concerns. That drives the climate movement. Very interesting thesis. And I think it was because she wrote further that climate change and those words can be abstract. They can actually be somewhat divisive. But people will fight for their water. She also lauds the divestment campaign and says no tactic in the climate wars has resonated more powerfully. I wonder what she thinks today of the current response to that campaign by the political right. Naomi sees the exercise of indigenous rights as the last line of defense. These rights represent, she says, some of the most robust tools available to prevent an ecological crisis. And she calls for the wealthy world to pay its climate debts, making a compelling case for reparations. Her conclusion is not surprising. Only mass social movements can save us now. The unfinished business of liberation calls for a Marshall Plan for the earth. But Naomi Klein declared, fundamentally, the task is to articulate not just an alternative set of policy proposals, but an alternative worldview to rival the one at the heart of the ecological crisis. One that should be embedded in interdependence rather than hyper-individualism, reciprocity rather than dominance, and cooperation rather than hierarchy. And now, before going on, I'm going to have another drink of water. Speaking of water. So, if you think that Naomi Klein's book on climate change and capitalism sounds a bit radical, try reading Laudato Si, the encyclical of Pope Francis. That 2015 encyclical or letter is full of wisdom and counsel on the care for our common home. Let me highlight a few central messages of the Pope, a leader of over 1 billion followers. And I need to emphasize this was intended to be a message to the world, not just to Christians, irrespective of our spiritual traditions. In his own words, I urgently appeal then for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. In his concern for our common home, Pope Francis expounds on rampant individualism, consumerism, and the self-centered culture of instant gratification. He writes, humanity is called to recognize the need for changes of lifestyle, production, and consumption. Pretty sweeping. All of this requiring a new and universal solidarity, one that embodies the poor, the excluded, the vulnerable, the outcast, and as Reverend Patty spoke last week, the stranger. Moreover, Pope Francis calls for systemic change. We need to reject a magical conception of the market, which would suggest that problems can simply be solved by an increase in profits for companies and individuals. A strategy, he goes on, for real change calls for rethinking processes in their entirety, for it's not enough to include a few superficial ecological considerations while failing to question the logic which underlies present-day culture. Pope Francis speaks to the various impacts of pollution and climate change, water, loss of biodiversity, global inequality. All of these interconnect. He looks at the human roots of what he calls the ecological crisis, including the effects of modern anthropocentrism. His concept of integral ecology is central to this message. He writes, since everything is closely interrelated and today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis, I suggest we now consider some elements of an integral ecology, one which clearly respects humans and social dimensions. When we speak of the environment, he goes on, what we really mean is a relationship between nature and society who live within it. We are faced not with two separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for solution demand an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, and at the same time, protecting nature. He calls for a new lifestyle, a new covenant between humanity and the environment, an ecological conversion, he calls it. We need a spirituality and interior impulse which encourages, motivates, and gives meaning to our individual and communal activity. Living our vocation to be protectors of God's handiwork is essential to a life of virtue. It's not an optional or secondary aspect of our Christian experience. The conversion needed to bring about lasting change is also a community conversion. Pope Francis closes with a prayer to the earth. The poor and the earth are crying out. Help us to protect all life, to prepare for a better future of justice, peace, love, and beauty. And now we turn to indigenous wisdom. Our opening land acknowledgement is weekly, a reminder to us all to acknowledge our interdependence with indigenous peoples, both past and present. Indigenous knowledge and wisdom has much to offer us for our own paths to protect the earth. I've chosen someone you likely will not know, a contemporary prophet and voice from the Penobscot Nation, from what we now call Maine. Sherry Mitchell, author of Sacred Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom for Living Spirit-Based Change. How appropriate, for Sherry's native name is Wena Hamu Kwasit, she who brings the light. Sherry has been an environmental activist for over 25 years, committed to engaging in active nonviolence on behalf of Indigenous peoples around the world. The way of life for her people and those of the Wabanaki Confederacy is about, quote, living close to the earth, close to our kin, and remaining ever mindful of our responsibilities to the sacred agreements that we have with every living being. It's about sustainability of the earth, our relationships, and our spiritual concerns and connections. However, her tribe's lived experience shortly after the invasion of Europeans has been, in her words, one of genocide, conquest, and competition. She goes on to say, in my family, we carry our own traumatic wounds that go back generations. She's referring to what historians call the Phipps Proclamation of 1755 that nearly destroyed her people by offering bounty ranging from 20 to 50 pounds, a huge sum in those days, for the capturing and taking of scalps of men, women, and children. Look it up. It's horrific. Yet again, her quote, 262 years later, it's difficult for people to understand the origin of this wound or the depth of its impact. In spite of this trauma, Sherry Mitchell's message is one of hope and healing, similar to Prince Ea and some of the other prophets we've journeyed with this morning. She writes, the time has come for us to deal with our sordid history and heal our collective wounds. We must formulate a strategy for seeking justice together. There's a need for reconciliation. We must transform our conflicts into pathways for peace. This strategy calls for decolonization, for the future of our planet and our children, decolonizing our mind and our ways of life. Ms. Mitchell defines colonization as the act of appropriation or forcibly overtaking a place and exerting control over it. Think oppression, the doctrine of discovery, man's dominion over nature. It comes in many forms. Decolonization compels us to look at man's control over natural resources, as well as the destruction of indigenous cultural traditions, beliefs, rituals, and even language. Think of the impacts of the Indian boarding school movement. And she says, reconnecting with the earth is fundamental to decolonizing our way of life. Indigenous core values lead to, quote, a way of life, reminding us of our obligations to one another, to the earth, and to the entirety of creation. In the final chapter of her book, Sherry Mitchell writes that all of the various Indigenous prophecies, quote, speak of a time of awakening when the people of the earth would rise up and take the sacred teaching held in the Indigenous way of life and work together to restore the health and well-being of Mother Earth. It's about dreaming the next 7 generations into life and breathing life into a collective vision of peace, harmony, and balance. So I hope this journey along the path, as brief as it may be, of several contemporary prophets, and there are many others, as you know, has perhaps opened up some visions, some dreams for you and I. I hope we can see some threads of what is needed, what is yet to come across and through the voices and words of each of these prophets. How will the future, 7 generations from now, look back at our journey, our path? Rabbi Jill Hamer writes, this is the description of prophecy. Inspiration that comes from somewhere larger than ourselves. Inspiration that is not intimidated by violence or power or wealth or societal disapproval. The overwhelming crisis that is climate change demands prophecy. She goes on, I am grateful for the prophetesses and prophets manifesting in my own day to wake us up to the truth. May we find the strength, courage, and mutual love to listen to them. Amen, and may it be so.
Thank you, Patrick. If you remember, those of you who were here when Reverend Patty was talking about everyday prophets all around us, I think perhaps we have one. Our closing song is Celebrate Earth Day Every Day, also by John Denver. It has an upbeat second half, so if you feel inspired, feel free to stand up, move around in celebration and commitment for the earth. Well done.
Well, again, thank you for the opportunity to share the journey of contemporary prophets this morning. And following John Denver's song, join us this Saturday for Earth Day on Cortez Street. The theme this year, how appropriate to some of what we mentioned this morning, water is life. Fun for all ages. Also, and there were some flyers in different parts of the sanctuary this morning, please consider joining us for the interfaith service, Earth Care Amidst Climate Change, on Thursday. It's our second annual one on April 27th at First Congregational Church. Not only will the interfaith choir be singing, but we'll have wonderful spiritual messages from the community about the care of the earth. Finally, on a personal note, many of you are aware that the Protect campaign was successfully completed this year with our presentation to Prescott City Council, believe it or not, on Valentine's Day, of the Quad Cities Climate Profile and the Local Climate Action Report. And it was released community-wide later that afternoon. And we present to Prescott Valley City Council on June 1st. A heartfelt, seriously, a heartfelt appreciation for all of you and GPUUC leadership in your support of that campaign. Thank you for showing up and raising your moral voice to protect the earth.
Thank you again, Patrick. It is now time to extinguish our chalice. With the extinguishing of our chalice, our worship time has ended, and now our service begins. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. For those in person, remember, we're going to have about 15 minutes. We'll get set up in here. You'll be able to go get your coffee and have short conversation and then come back in 15 minutes. So we'll get started with the meeting. For those on Zoom, are we letting people go into the breakout rooms, Elaine? Yes, no? We are not doing breakout rooms for those. Oh, I see it in the chat. Thank you, Deidre. So for those who are on Zoom, you can come back to the main room after you get your coffee, et cetera, but we won't be doing breakout rooms this morning. Before we close, are there any visitors? I know there happen to be a couple of visitors here for the first time, but any visitors, please raise your hands and we'd love to hear you introduce yourselves. I'm looking over there.